Welcome back, listeners, to 1 p.m. Prad Talk. Today we have something special in store. I have received a ton of questions about the minimum viable product, or MVP, especially in the context of Scrum. So in this episode, I will answer the top 10 questions sent by you. Let's dive in. Question number 1 from Alex in San Francisco. I keep hearing that the term MVP. Can you give me a straightforward definition? Absolutely, Alex. At its core, the MVP, or minimum viable product, is a product version containing just enough feature to make it usable for early adopter. Its main purpose is to gain feedback for further iteration. Let's break it down a little bit with an example. Let's say an MVP for a note-taking app. Let's start with the basic feature set. At its most basic, the app allows users to create a new note, write in it, and save it. And let's say the simplest user interface, that is the design minimalistic with just an add note button, a space to write a note, and save button. And then maybe we might also have a feature such as to be able to, like a storage, the notes are saved locally on that user's device. No extra feature being added. At this stage, there are no additional features like cloud syncing, categorizing notes, adding imaging, voice memo, or sharing notes with others. The MVP version of the app is then released to a small group of early adopters. They use the app and provide feedback on any bug they find and suggest improvement or additional features they would like to see. After collecting feedback, the developers can work on the next version, adding more features like cloud syncing or categorizing based on the user's needs and feedback. The main advantage of this approach is that the developer can validate their basic idea with real user before investing a lot of time and resources into developing advanced features that might not necessarily or desired by the target audience. Question number 2 from Pia in Mumbai. How does the MVP fit into the Scrum framework? Great question, Priya. In Scrum, we prioritize delivering value in short cycle called sprints. An MVP can emerge from one or several sprints depending on its complexity. And essentially, Scrum and MVP go hand in hand, delivering quick, valuable results and adapting based on feedback. Let's dive into details how MVP fit into Scrum. Let's take the product backlog and prioritization. Before starting with the sprint, there is a product backlog, which is a list of all the features or requirements for the product. From this list, the most essential features required to build an MVP are prioritized. Let's take sprint. Based on the prioritization, the team takes on a set of features to develop during each sprint. If the MVP is simple, it might be completed in one sprint. However, for a complex product, the MVP might be spread across several sprints. Let's take into consideration the feedback loop. Scrum or Agile is all about the feedback loop. After each sprint, the potential shippable product increment can be presented to stakeholders and early users for feedback. This feedback can then be used to refine feature sprint. Now, let's take also into consideration release. Once the MVP feature are developed and tested, the MVP can be released to a wider audience for further validation and feedback. So another way that it's fits into Scrum is iterative development. Based on the feedback received from the MVP, further features or improvement can be added in subsequent sprint. In summary, Scrum provides structured framework that can facilitate the development of an MVP in iterative and incremental manner, ensuring that the product continuously adapts to user needs and feedback. Let's take question number 3 from Diego in Buenos Aires. Why should a company choose to develop an MVP rather than a full-fledged product? Good question, Diego. It's all about risk management. With an MVP, you invest fewer resources, validate market needs, and gain user feedback. This approach helps avoid the trap of building a full product that the market doesn't actually need or want. Let's talk about some of the pros, or let's talk about some of the advantage in doing this. cost efficient. MVP development usually requires fewer resources in terms of time, money, and manpower. This can save the company a lot of unnecessary expenditure, especially if the product doesn't resonate with the target audience. Another advantage is quick market entry. Instead of spending a long durations developing a full-fledged product, companies can quickly launch an MVP and establish a presence in the market. Another advantage is valuable feedback. An MVP allows companies to gather early feedback from real users. This feedback is crucial in understanding user preference, behavior, and requirements. Another advantage I would like to mention is flexibility. Launching an MVP means that the product is still in a flexible stage. If they need to pivot or make a significant change based on feedback or market condition, it's easier to do so at the MVP stage than after fully developing a product. Another important advantage is builds customer relationship. Engaging users early in the product life cycle can lead to building a loyal user base. These early adopters can become advocates for product if they find value in it. Question number 4 from Sierra in Berlin. Are there any misconceptions about MVP that we should be aware of? Absolutely, Sierra. One major misconception is viewing the MVP as the final product. In reality, it's just the starting point. Another is thinking MVP means per minimum, when in fact it needs to offer genuine value to users. Another misconception is not a final product. An MVP is not the end, but its beginning. It's a starting point to validate assumption and gather feedback, more than just minimum. While MVP stands for minimum viable product, it shouldn't be mistaken for a barely functioning or low quality product. It must provide genuine value to users and effectively address their primary needs. Question number 5 from Hassan in Cairo. Can you give a real-world example of successful MVP? Of course, Hassan. Consider Spotify. Initially, they released an MVP focused solely on music streaming without additional features like playlists or radio. They gauged the demand, gathered feedback, and iteratively added more features based on user needs. Let's talk a little bit about the Spotify MVP journey. Initial concept. Spotify's initial goal was provide a solution to the rampant music piracy issue. Their proposition was simple: provide an easy-to-use platform where users could stream music legally. Spotify focused on core feature. For their MVP, Spotify concentrated its primary function, music streaming. They wanted to ensure that this function worked flawlessly and was user-friendly. Another thing that I wanted to talk about the Spotify in their MVP journey was invitation-only release. To control the influx of user and monitor the platform's performance, Spotify initially launched as an invitation-only service in specific markets. This approach allowed them to gather feedback from controlled group of users, and then from there they were able to feedback and iteration. As a user began to adapt the platform, Spotify collected feedback on usability, music catalog, and potential features. They used this feedback to prioritize and develop additional features such as playlists, radio station, social steering, and podcast. Expansion. Let's talk a little bit about how Spotify was able to also expand. Once they confirmed the demand and fine-tuned their service based on early user feedback, Spotify expanded to other markets and opened up the platform to a broader audience. And after that, continuous improvement. Even after the initial success, Spotify continued to iterate on their product, introducing new features like Discover Weekly and integration with other services, always striving to enhance the user experience. Question number 6 from Lin in Shanghai. What is the most challenging part of developing an MVP? Lin, The most challenging part often is deciding what features to include and what to leave out. It requires a deep understanding of users' needs, market demand, and clear product version. Question number 7 from Grace in Sydney. How do you ensure that your MVP is actually viable and not just minimum? Spot on, Grace. It's a delicate balance. The key is to ensure that even in its simplest form, the MVP delivers real value to its target users and serves its core function effectively. Question number 8 from Ken in Nairobi. How do you measure the success of an MVP? Great question, Ken. Success metrics for MVP can be user feedback, the number of sign-ups, user engagement levels, and of course any revenue generated, but the primary aim is learning and validation. Question number 9 from James in Toronto. Can an MVP evolve into a final product? Hey, I'm also based in Toronto, by the way. That's really cool. The answer is definitely, James. In fact, that's the ideal. An MVP starts as a foundation based on continuous feedback and iteration. It can evolve and mature into a full-fledged market-ready product. Last question from Miguel in Mexico City. Any final advice for someone starting with their MVP in Scrum environment? Absolutely, Miguel. Stay user-centric. Be flexible and embrace feedback. Remember, an MVP is about learning quickly, adapting, and ensuring you are on the right track. That's wrap up today's episode on MVP in the Scrum framework. A big thank you to everyone who sent in their question. If you find value in this episode, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more insight on Agile methodologies. Have a topic in mind for our next episode? Drop it in the comment below. Till next time, keep iterating, keep improving, and remember, stay agile.